Welcome to episode 1 of Go With Your Gut podcast, where we explore the world of your gut microbiome and its impact on your health. Today, I have a special guest with me, a subject matter expert, somebody who has intimate real life experience with the impact of diet on their gut microbiome. I'd like to welcome to the pod today one of my closest friends and brothers, Yusuf Ahmed.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Really
man.
glad to be here.
I'm glad you agreed to be on the pod today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got so interested in the gut microbiome and the impact that diet has on it.
Yeah, so I think I've always kind of been a health conscious eater. Growing up as an athlete, played football here at Davidson College for a couple of years, and it wasn't really until my sophomore year of college where I really gained that interest in the gut microbiome. I was going through some health issues, some autoimmune condition stuff. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and pretty much knowing that it was a disease of the stomach, I read a lot on the impacts that the microbiome had on the immune system and things like that. And so I'd gone to a couple of the doctors that I was seeing, kind of with the idea of, how much could diet have an impact on my Crohn's disease. And I kind of got different answers from different doctors, but it was kind of just a rabbit hole that I dug down and kind of decided to try it out for myself. And here we are today. And I think it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Cool. Well, I think that this paper can offer you some very valuable insights into what you've been dealing with. I'm sure things you've heard before, and just generally useful information for anybody who is interested in optimizing their gut health through their diet. Today, we're discussing a fascinating study that investigated the effects of 2 dietary interventions on the gut and immune system. So, why is this important? As scientists learn more about the gut microbiome, they're discovering just how crucial it is for our overall health, because the gut microbiome is composed of trillions of bacteria that play a crucial role in digestion, nutrient absorption, immune system development, and protection against disease. So the composition and function of this incredible ecosystem are highly influenced by what we eat. This is where our study that we're discussing today comes into play. So researchers wanted to understand how specific diets could modulate human immune status by influencing the gut microbiota. The rates of non-communicable diseases are skyrocketing globally, and more populations shift towards a Western-style diet. Alarmingly, many of these chronic diseases are driven by chronic inflammation, which is defined as a state of persistent immune activation that can damage the organs over time. So the gut microbiota plays a significant role in regulating this inflammation throughout the body. So researchers designed a study named the FI-FO study, in short for fiber and fermented foods, to investigate whether targeted dietary changes could improve human health by influencing the gut microbiome and immune system. This FI-FO study involved healthy adults who were randomly assigned to one of 2 dietary groups. The high fiber group focused on increasing their consumption of plant-based foods rich in fiber, such as legumes, grains, nuts, and vegetables, and the high fermented food group focused on upping their intake of foods rich in beneficial bacteria, including yogurts, kefir, kimchi, and kombucha. Over 10 weeks, researchers carefully monitored changes in the participants' gut microbiome and immune systems to see how dietary interventions affected the types of activities of bacteria residing in the gut and whether those changes were associated with shifts in immune function. So, before we get into the results of this paper, I wanted to get your opinion on what you think the difference will be on between the 2 diets, the high fiber and the high fermented foods, and what impact you think they would have on the gut microbiome.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say that doing some research on this myself, there's a lot of talk about a high fiber diet being, giving ample food to the good bacteria in your gut, and helping them thrive, helping them win the battle per se. But and on the other hand, there's also one of the biggest markers of gut microbiome health, I believe, is the diversity of the gut microbiome. And so introducing fermented foods could definitely be a great way to introduce a more diverse set of bacteria into the gut microbiome. So I'm definitely interested to see what the results of the study were.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for that input. So, diving into the results, it was actually found that in the high fiber diet, there was an increased production of enzymes known to break down carbs, specifically complex carbs and fiber. And there was actually not necessarily an increase in gut microbiome diversity, but there was an increase in the density of bacteria. Um, it was speculated that this was a result of potentially limited environmental exposure to new bacteria or potentially sample bias and the subjects that were in the study not consuming diets that were rich in new bacteria. So they were re exposing potentially their guts to bacteria that might have already been a part of that ecosystem. And also, lastly, that maybe 10 weeks just wasn't long enough for significant changes from fiber.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, kind of a lack of exposure to new bacteria in the gut. I think just a high fiber diet is gonna give increasingly amount of prebiotics or fiber to those existing bacteria in the gut, but there's really no way to introduce new bacteria into the gut without some sort of probiotic or fermented food like in the other group.
Yeah, and they also found that there were three different immune responses observed among participants. The first being increased inflammation, actually,
Interesting.
and the second of which being decreased inflammation. And there was also participants, which was the large majority, who had no change um, in inflammation. And for similar reasons, um, researchers speculated that the time frame of this study may not have been long enough to observe the effects of these dietary changes on this particular population with these fiber adjusted diets. So moving into the fermented food group, unlike high fiber diets, it was found that they experienced a remarkable increase in gut microbiome diversity that actually persisted even after the study ended during a choice phase where participants could choose how much fermented food they wanted to continue eating. Okay, so these are some pretty significant findings, right? And we know that these microbiome shifts um, can influence our immune system and potentially promote a healthier inflammatory balance within the body. This is something the study also looked at, right? Could you give us a little bit on how potentially the gut microbiome is related to our body's immune response?
So I think something interesting that not a lot of people might know about is that our gut consists of about 80% of the immune cells in our body are located in the gut, right? So I think it's even an understatement for, you know, people that say that, you know, altering the gut may have an effect on the immune system. I'd say even more so that modifying the gut is probably one of the best ways to influence our immune system.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So this study also dove into the immune response that resulted from these changes observed in the gut microbiome, looking at different levels of molecules that were found in stool samples from the study participants. So the study found a connection between butyrate and B cells, also known as antibodies. Butyrate is a fatty acid produced by the good bacteria in our gut, and through measuring butyrate levels, we can get a good sense of our uh, bacterial activity and how our bacteria are communicating with each other and our bodies. So it was found that higher levels of butyrate were associated with lower abundances of B cells, which are implicated, as you may know, in autoimmune disease. So, what do you think are the implications of potentially this negative correlation between butyrate in the gut and this decreased abundance of B cells that are potentially implicated in autoimmune disease. I know you've had experience with that personally.
Yeah. So during my journey with my Crohn's disease, I partnered up with a doctor online, and he kind of coached me through some of these dietary changes that I needed to make in order to pretty much benefit from the science that we're seeing. And for the people at home, butyrate, like we said, is the byproduct of these good bacteria in our gut. These good bacteria in the gut are eating the fiber that we digest, and they're then going ahead and producing butyrate, which is, um, like the studies showed, negatively or
Negatively correlated with the abundance of B
negatively
cells.
correlated with B cells. Correct. So this is pretty much showing us that these higher levels of butyrate are able to almost calm down our immune system and calm down the inflammation in our gut, right? Because B cells are essentially an immune response when when the body notices that something's wrong. These B cells are being produced. So for higher levels of butyrate to result in lower levels of B cells, this shows us that butyrate is pretty much
Almost regulatory, right?
yeah.
In the B cell immune response, right? So if we take a step back, we know that autoimmune diseases are defined by the body mistakenly attacking its own healthy tissues and cells, and that can cause a plethora of adverse symptoms for people that are affected.
Exactly. Yeah, like you mentioned, these autoimmune conditions are a lot of the times characterized by an overactive immune system, right? So maybe too much B cell production that is causing, the body is having a difficult time identifying self from non-self. So overactive immune system with the production of many B cells is going to result in the attack of the body's own tissues, leading to a ton of different issues, like you mentioned.
Yeah, this study also found that there was a strong correlation between the enzymes that break down fiber and complex carbohydrates that we mentioned earlier and changes in host proteins related to inflammation. So it was found that increased abundance of these uh, carb degrading enzymes resulted in a decrease in host proteins related to inflammation, potentially suggesting that high fiber diets could modulate the immune system and reduce inflammation in the body.
Yeah, so I think looking at this study as a whole, there's three things that really jump out within the results section. I think first of all, in the fermented foods group, there were two main big findings as far as how the microbiome affects health and the immune system. So first of all, we saw that the addition of high fermented foods to the diet increases the diversity of the gut microbiome, which is of course a big positive as we mentioned before. And second, coming from the same group, is that it also modulates the
Immune system.
the immune system.
Mm.
Yes, through the mechanism which we talked about with the butyrate. And finally, in the high fiber group, although we didn't see an increase in microbiome diversity, what we did see was an increase in these enzymes, these carbohydrate degrading enzymes that were correlated with decreased levels of inflammation in the body. I'd like to give a huge thank you to today's sponsors, Kirkland Pistachios. Add a little crunch to your day with Kirkland's signature shelled pistachios. They're salted, dry roasted, and are already shelled so you can enjoy them right away. They make a great snack or try them in your salads or desserts. We've got some in the studio here today. 1 ounce has got 3 grams of fiber. Look at that.
Easy way to get your fiber in delicious, nutritious snacks. So get your hands on those. Anyway, back to the scheduled programming. Yeah, yeah. So those are great takeaways to have from this article. But now one might ask, what does this mean for us in our daily lives? Right? How do we translate these findings into dietary practices or lifestyle changes that might result in positive or beneficial uh, health implications? Right. So a big takeaway from this, I think, was food choices. Right? How your food choices impact your health. You have something you might want to say on that note?
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I really loved about the experimental design of this study is that these dietary interventions were additional to the subjects' diets, right? So they're not going on some ridiculous blueberry cleanse or some juice cleanse, all
Mm,
this where they can't eat and enjoy the foods that they eat on a normal daily basis. Those kind of diets, they're just very unsustainable for a number of reasons, especially just on a social level. These kind of diets, these extreme diets, make it really hard to interact with people on a daily basis. You can't go out to eat with friends, you can't get dinner with family. But like we said, um, this study shows us that these two different interventions, these are things that can just be added to our diet on a normal, daily basis. We can add more fermented foods to our diet. We can add more fiber to our diet, and we're going to see these same benefits in our own lives.
right. And this definitely also opens the door to the potential for studying other dietary changes, right? How do probiotics, prebiotics, how do those affect your gut microbiome, right? These are just two possible changes you can make to your diet that have um, results on your gut microbiome and that have results on your immune system. There's a world of different possibilities down the research avenue for the potential for improving your health through your diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I wish this study did was have a third group where they introduced both of these interventions. I think that'd be really interesting to see how the combination of all three of those factors that we talked about just before, how those would influence the immune system and just health overall.
I agree. I agree. I think it's important to acknowledge that this study is indeed limited by things like only sampling from healthy individuals and from only studying these participants over a 10-week period, right? The study can be improved, added to, and expanded upon. But I think another takeaway, right, is how important personalized nutrition is and how each body responds differently based on a multitude of factors, right? Do you have any closing remarks, any final takeaways?
Yeah, I think like you touched on before, I think maybe just something to send the viewers home with is, you know, we've got all this information. How can we use it? Like
Mm.
we just spoke about. Um, some people may not even know what a high fiber food is, what a, high probiotic rich food is, fermented food is. So maybe just, some high fiber food options I can think of off the top of my head. Things like oat bran, vegetables.
Plenty. Yeah. Eat your vegetables, guys, right? I
Eat
mean,
your
eat your
vegetables.
vegetables.
The big leafy ones.
The kales, yeah. I mean,
Kales, broccoli, sweet potatoes. As far as like Julian mentioned earlier, for probiotics, right? Fermented foods, kimchi, even something as simple as Greek yogurt every
yeah.
day. You get a spoonful of Greek yogurt a couple times a day, and
Yeah. Kombucha, everybody loves that now. Those are
yeah,
pretty,
yeah.
those are fermented.
I'd say to be wary of the sugar that might come along with a lot of these kombuchas on the market now, but you can even get a SCOBY and make some kombucha on your own. So, if that's something you're interested in, try it out, and the health benefits will follow.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I think this paper offers extremely relevant insights into potentially modifying our diets and potentially looking for ways to improve our health through our diets. Again, so can't thank you enough. That'll be all for this episode of Go With Your Gut.